G'day everyone, welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. I've just finished watching the game between the British Lions and the Queensland Reds played in Brisbane today. And I'm going to give you my full match review of that game right now in this video. So let's get on with it. G'day everyone, if you haven't been here before, my name is Mark. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan living in beautiful Cancun in Mexico. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the British Lions game against the Queensland Red that's just finished in Brisbane in Australia. And what a game it was, a really good game of rugby, I thought, particularly in the first half. And then we saw the British Lions dominate in the second half. But let's focus on what happened across this game because there's some really good signs from Andy Farrell's team. And there was also some very good play, I thought, from the Queensland Reds in the first half. They really took it to the Lions. Now this game was played in Brisbane at Suncorp Stadium, which is going to be the venue for the first test between the British Lions and the Australian Wallabies on July the 19th. And as we head towards that, the Lions have got a packed schedule of midweek games and weekend games. In fact, they're playing 3 games in 7 days. They play the New South Wales Waratahs at the Sydney Football Stadium on Saturday night. That's going to be another huge game, and it's almost a sellout. So that's going to be the biggest crowd for a rugby game for the Waratahs in their history, which is going to be fantastic for the game. This crowd was the biggest crowd for a Queensland Reds game since the 2013 Lions Tour of Australia. So the Australian public are getting really behind this tour of the Lions, which is great to see, and it's good for the game of rugby. Now this game started off with a very high intensity, I should say, and both teams really taking it towards each other in the first couple of minutes. We saw a couple of lineouts from each side really testing each other out, and the Queensland Reds were really coming with their intensity. And I was quite excited in the beginning because I thought, wow, these guys are really up for it, and we've got a couple of players there who are really shining through in the first few minutes for the Queensland Reds. Hunter Paisami was one of those. He was playing at number 12 today for the Queensland Reds and playing very, very well. And if you watched him before, you've seen him in an Australian Wallaby jersey playing in previous years. So in fact, it was Paisami in the 7th minute that got a good line break, and it set up a good multi-phase of play for the Queensland Reds that took them deep into the Lions territory and gave them an opportunity to score the first try. And they did actually come up with the first try after 14 phases of play. They were playing really, really well. It was a great set of combinations from the Queensland Reds. The forwards and the backs were combining. They were pushing towards the line. The pick and goes were really, really good. And it was Tamunga Allen that went over for the first try of the game, and it was scored for the Queensland Reds. So that was a really good build up to that try, I thought, from the Queensland Reds. Well deserved in that first few minutes. They had really been putting the pressure on the British Lions, and the defensive line just finally cracked after that pressure came through. It was Jack Morgan that was under Tamunga Allen, but he couldn't stop him from going over. So a well-deserved try. It was converted. So the Queensland Reds, thanks to the crowd as well, they got out to the lead of 7-0 in the first 12 minutes of this game, and it really got the crowd into the game, and I'm sure that's something the Queensland coach Les Kiss wanted from his team, was to get the crowd right into the game in the early minutes. But this Lions team is too good to be held back, and it wasn't long before we saw them deep on attack, and Bundy Key, one of my favourite players on the planet, got the ball and did one of those bullocking runs towards the line. He got over the line, but he was held up. In fact, when we saw the close-in replay of that, it looked like he actually got stuck on top of a couple of his own players. So a bit of friendly fire involved in that one, and it stopped Key from officially getting a try rewarded to him. But it wasn't much longer before we saw the Lions keeping the pressure on. It was only a matter of time, we thought, before the Lions were actually going to be able to break over. And it was Tommy Freeman who went in for his first try of the day after 18 minutes. And it was a good worked move by the Lions. It went out through their whole back line, and Tommy Freeman was able to get over in the corner. And this was something the Lions were starting to do in this game, which was really, really impactful. Every time they put the ball through all their hands in the back line, they were putting pressure on the Queensland Reds, and the Reds' a defensive line wasn't able to keep pace. So it looked like at any time the Lions were able to get through and score a try out wide. So that was a play they were going to on a regular basis in the first 20 minutes of this game, and it really worked for them. Finn Russell got the conversion of the try. We're at 7-0 after 19 minutes of the game, but Finn Russell was also starting to do some really good things in general play by just getting that pass and that distribution out. He was calling the shots from his number 10 jersey, and he's just such an exceptionally good player. One of the best 10s in the world for sure, no doubt about it. And I just love watching Finn Russell play. He knows how to orchestrate a game. His game management skills are just absolutely fantastic, and he was starting to come into his own in this game, and I thought that was going to create a lot of danger for the Queensland Reds. On the 21st minute of the first half, we saw an incredible play from Duhan van der Merwe on defence when the ball was kicked deep from the kickoff and he was put back into his own goal, and the Queensland Reds were chasing up on him. It looked like he was in a bit of danger of getting caught, but he was able to get himself out of the end goal, run down the touchline a little bit, get the ball inside, and the Lions were able to clear from their line, which was a very big attacking opportunity for the Queensland Reds. But once again, the skills of these players in the Lions team really shone out on that occasion, and Duhan van der Merwe backed himself to get out of the in-touch area on that particular occasion and be able to get the Lions out of deep in defence. It was a really, really good play. And then on the 25th minute, we saw the Queensland Reds putting together another series of great attacks towards the line of the Lions. And we saw a kick go in behind the defence, and it was Josh Fluke who picked up an amazing pickup and was able to get the ball across the line, dive on it and score a fantastic try for the Reds. It brought the stadium alight from the Aussies that were in the crowd. And it was a fantastic opportunist try from Josh Fluke, who just enabled, he got a good bounce, there was no doubt about it. But at the same time, he had to hold on to the ball and then get himself over the try line, which he did untouched by any Lions defenders. So a great try from the Queensland Reds. It put them back into the lead, and it really kept the crowd in the game. So we're at the 26th minute mark in the game now, and the conversion was unfortunately missed, but the Queensland Reds had the lead by 12 points to 7. And you know what? I thought, well, this is going to be a really tight game. This is really good. And if they can hold in there for the rest of the first half, who knows what could happen in the second half. But this Lions team is too good to lie down, and they weren't going to take this lying down. And it wasn't long before they were putting the pressure on again in the Queensland's territory. And they were deep on attack again, and it was that man Freeman who'd already scored a try in the game, went very, very close as he headed towards the goalpost after the forwards had done a lot of pick and goes. Freeman came in, got the ball close to the line, reached out to try and get over the line, but he just came up short. So nearly another try for the British Lions on that occasion. But at this time, every time they got the ball, they were looking really, really dangerous. Their forwards, particularly their loosies, were doing some fantastic work. Jack Morgan was having a great game up to this stage, as well as the number 8, Conan, who was going really, really well. And I just thought that the pressure that was starting to mount from the Lions, it was going to be obvious that the Queensland Reds weren't going to be able to deal with this for a long period of the game. The lineouts were going well for the Lions as well. Atoje in particular was getting into the game. Two things I saw for him early in the first half was his line-out prowess, but also his leadership around the field. He was really making sure the right decisions were being taken by the Lions. He was directing traffic, getting his players involved in the decisions as well, and it looked like the communication channels from Atoje to his team were very, very good. Good performance so far in the game from Atoje, I thought. We're at the 29th minute, and the British Lions got a penalty close to the line, and they decided to do a tap and go, and they got their forwards involved, and they only needed to do 2 pick and goes before Porter got over for a good try for the Lions right under the post. So the Lions were obviously going to take the lead with the conversion that was successful, and all of a sudden they were in the lead by 14 points to 12 after 30 minutes. So the Reds kept it close for 30 minutes in this game. Unlike the Western Force the previous week against the Lions, were the Reds going to be able to keep up the intensity required to stay with this Lions team? And then in the 35th minute of the first half, we saw an incident within a scrum when Uru, the number 6 for the Queensland Reds, actually got his hand involved with the ball inside the scrum. Got penalised for that, so a bit of an amateur issue there from Uru. And as a result of that, the Lions took advantage of it. They got the ball out wide, the ball went out to van der Merwe, and he ended up scoring a great try for the British Lions close to half-time. So this was a real bad mistake on behalf of Queensland Reds. They really let the Lions have an easy penalty there. They were able to execute a good play and got over for another try, and this really put the pressure on and pushed the scoreboard out at half-time. Try from van der Merwe made it 19-12. Finn Russell got the conversion over, so that was 21 points to 12. And there was just a couple of minutes left in the first half. Now from the restart, there was quite a bit of an excitement because the Queensland Reds kicked off. The British and Irish Lions missed the ball altogether. It bounced deep into the British Lions in-touch area, hit the flagpole, and the Queensland Reds winger Anderson nearly scored a miraculous try as the ball came off the in-touch flag inside the in-touch goal area. But unfortunately, he didn't get any downward pressure on it before it went over the dead ball line. That would have been some try. I've never seen that type of try scored before, and I didn't on this occasion because it wasn't a try. So the clock ticked down for the last couple of minutes, and we went to the half time at 21 points to 12. And I thought, wow, that was a really good first half of rugby from both teams. The Queensland Reds showed their intensity in that first half. That stupid mistake from Uru cost them dearly, I thought, in the last few minutes of that first half, where they got a try scored against them. And that's the difference between test level rugby and these provincial teams. Just silly little mistakes like that can cost you really, really dearly. So in that first half, there were standout players for me on both sides of the field. On the Queensland Red side, Cannon was playing fantastic in the forwards, did some fantastic things, even a 40-metre kick down the field he did at one stage. Biles, their number 8, was playing well. He's had a great Super Rugby series, Biles at number 8. And of course, he's replacing Harry Wilson at the moment, who's been injured. But what a fantastic player Biles is, and he really stood up as the number 8 in that first half. Uru did some good things, but he cost them too with some silly errors that ended up costing points against the Queensland Reds. And Hunter Paisami was the other standout for me in the Queensland Reds in the first half. Tamunga Allen had a really good first half, scored that try for the Queensland Reds and was doing some really good things in the scrum. And I thought that was an area where the Queensland Reds were really competing. We saw a couple of penalties against the British Lions. They were trying to close that gap too fast. Dolan, the referee, was picking them up on it. He was telling them time and time again. But the Queensland Reds got a few penalties from that because they really articulated their technical skill when it came to that scrum clash and the bind process, and that really paid dividends for them in the end of that first half. So Tom Curry, Jack Morgan and Conan were real standouts for me in that first half, but Atoje probably took the cake for me. Finn Russell was brilliant. Van der Verve was getting hungry, and it was also good to see Bundy Aki doing some of his fantastic runs. I thought in the second half it was only a matter of time where this game was going to open up, and as the British and Irish Lions were to empty their bench, I thought they were probably going to be able to put too much pressure on the Queensland Reds to be able to stay with them. But all was to play for at half time. 3 tries to 2 in favour of the British Lions in the first half, and I thought that was pretty good and indicative of the game at that stage. I thought just that silly error by Uru in the scrum gave away that try to the British Lions deep in that first half. So what was going to happen in the second half? Well, it didn't take long for us to find out, and it was all about the British Lions coming out. The score. So in the second half, it was all the British Lions. They scored 31 points to 0 against this Queensland team. And it started pretty early on as far as the tries were concerned. And it was that man, Maro Itoje, who went over for their first try. But tries also came to Jack Morgan. Hugh Jones scored a brilliant try. Gary Ringrose got one after the hooter had gone off. And we also saw Tommy Freeman get his second try of the day. It was a very convincing performance by the British Lions in the second half. They turned the screw on the Queensland Reds, and the Queensland Reds, their game plan started to fall away a little bit, and that was because of the fantastic defensive work that was being put in by the Lions. So Andy Farrell waited until the 50th minute until he loaded the bench onto the field, and we saw a whole new front row. We saw Russell get taken off at first 5 and Finn Smith come on, and we also saw Bundy Aki moved out wider, and we saw Gary Ringrose come on. So it was a bit of a shuffle around in the second half, and as Andy Farrell continues to look at keeping these players fresh for the 3 games they've got in 7 days, but also looking at who he's going to have as his test combinations. And I can't help to think that what we saw from Finn Russell again today, he cemented that number 10 jersey for me. He's absolutely fantastic. He worked well with Gibson Park today, who I haven't mentioned this stage of the video, who was also playing very well, particularly his kicking game I thought was good today from Gibson Park. But that combination of Gibson Park and Finn Russell for that first 50 minutes of the game, I thought worked really, really well. Alex Mitchell came on in the second half for Gibson Park, did well, and was solid again like he was against the Western Force when he came on the field. It was a great performance by the Lions in the second half. They just kept really ratcheting up the pressure on the Reds, and every time the Reds did have the ball, they ran into this wall of defensive line from the British Lions, and that's something they've brought to this tour. The speed of the defensive line is very, very impressive, but not only the speed, it's the way that they get in there and they fight for the turnover ball, and Jack Morgan was absolutely huge today. He was doing some fantastic work in the breakdowns. Probably one of my man of the matches because Itoje was outstanding again today. There were so many across the field. Finn Russell, I thought, had a brilliant game. Aki was good. We saw the best of Bundy Aki again today, I thought, in terms of defence and also in attack. He was bullocking with his runs. He was getting the ball out wide. And we saw good contributions as well from particularly Duhan Vandermeer on the wing. He did some good, tough work on the wing. And we didn't see as much of Elliot Daly today as we saw last week against the Western Force. In fact, he got a bit of a knock to his elbow later on in the game today. And we'll have to see how that pulls up for Elliot Daly. So the Lions scored 21 points to 12 in the first half. They scored 31 points to 0 in the second half. That's a total of 52 points to 12 in this game. So the second game in the row that the Lions have scored over 50 points. And boy, were they good for it as well. I was very impressed with this Lions team, and I think everybody that got along to Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane to watch this game in the evening were very impressed with what they saw. And I think they were also captivated that the Queensland Reds kept it relatively close for that first half to make it a good game of rugby, and definitely worth the ticket price, I thought. But in the second half, we saw how the British and Irish Lions are going to be so hard to beat in this series against Australia, because when you can bring the quality of test match rugby players in off the bench in the second half and keep that pressure on, or even ratchet it up to another level, that's going to be mighty difficult for the Australian Wallabies to compete against. So it's going to be interesting to see what strategy Joe Schmidt has to take on this British and Irish Lions, because what we saw from the Queensland Reds today, that one or two passing out in the back line and trying to break through the defensive line, it just wasn't working. Their kick strategy at times wasn't very good either. Queensland Red, they gave the ball away too much easily without getting the defensive line up and into the British Lions' face to give them an opportunity to compete for the ball. And that was another area where I thought there was a differential between the two teams. So 2 games down for the Lions, and they haven't had a point scored against them in the second half of either game so far. So will the New South Wales Waratahs be able to change that on Saturday night in Sydney? We'll have to wait and see, but I can't wait for that one. This is turning out to be a fantastic Lions tour. As I said, plenty of great players across the park. I'd give Itoje and Morgan the nod as far as men of the match goes for this one. But there were a lot of good contributors. Finn Russell was another one as far as I'm concerned. Conan had a really good game as well. And we saw Chisholm doing some really good things as well while he was on the field. So also some good contribution from the front row at different times around the field. Porter scored that try, of course. But also that was an area where I think Andy Farrell is going to go away and say we need to work out these scrums a little bit better. We've got a couple of technical issues going on there that the referees are picking on. The same thing happened against the Western Force, so we'll need to see that cleaned up against New South Wales. But I'm being a bit nitpicking here because it was an outstanding performance by the British and Irish Lions again. 52 points to 12. They were really good for that score as well, and I really enjoyed watching this game. Now, if you watched the game, let me know in the comments what you thought of the game. Who were some of the players that stood out for you? And do you see the Lions being able to continue this form and maybe score another 50 points against the New South Wales Waratahs in Sydney on Saturday night? It's getting exciting, this tour, and I can't wait for the next game, and I'll be following it all here on Inside Rugby with Mark. So if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, get on and do it and join our wonderful rugby community from across the world. I've got lots of games coming up this weekend. We've got the All Blacks playing against France, of course, in New Zealand, and Dunedin. That game kicks off on Saturday. We've also got Japan against Wales on Friday. That's going to be a great game. Can Wales get up and win that one? Then we've got the Springboks also playing in the weekend. We've got Argentina and England playing. That's going to be a great game. So a huge amount of rugby coming up. And don't forget, Australia against Fiji on Sunday from Newcastle in Australia. That's going to be a good warm-up game for the Wallabies as well. And we'll see them for the first time this year with Joe Schmidt at the helm again, and see whether they can impress us to take on the British and Irish Lions in a couple of weeks' time. So there we go. Huge amount of rugby coming up. Make sure you follow us here on Inside Rugby with Mark, and I'll see you again really soon in the next video. Until then, it's time to say adios from beautiful Cancun in Mexico. Bye for now.